Right, welcome to Ask the Experts. This is the Tri-City Regional Chamber series to help business leaders grow their companies with practical advice and answers that you can implement right away. And I'm so excited for our topic today as a business owner. Special welcome to those watching on Zoom. You are a valuable part of our audience today, and hello to those that are watching this recording on YouTube. How is the future? I always like to say that. Okay. My name is Paul Casey, and I do leadership and team development with Growing Forward Services, and I'm the new executive director of Leadership Tri-Cities. I'm so excited about that, and I'm privileged to be your facilitator today. This is a free benefit of your chamber membership, and it couldn't be possible without the generous sponsorship of STCU. With us today is Dustin. Come on up here, Dustin. Say a greeting to the group.
Thank you very much, Paul. My name is Dustin Winzak. I work for STCU. I'm the branch manager out at the Southbridge location out in Kennewick. STCU is honored to be the host of the Ask the Experts. And today's topic is a timely one. STCU cares deeply about small businesses, and we recognize that the community health stems from vibrant and robust small business growth. So we're pleased to have a wide variety of services at STCU and products that can help those businesses grow. I look forward to learning from the panel today. And each business that's represented here with all of you in the audience, as well as up on the panel, have something valuable to share and offer all of our customers. So I have no doubt that we'll find the concept shared to be valuable and insightful and help build our own businesses moving forward. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panel and let them take it from here. Thank you all for being here.
All right, let's give them a big hand. Thank you. We are grateful for your support. For approximately half of our 90 minutes together, our experts will be presenting gold nuggets on our topic of sales success strategies. And for the second half, they will answer your questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, and we do encourage everyone to think of one question. So whether you're on Zoom, you can put in the chat, or if you are here, you can also text me at 509-392-1895. I'm going to write that down because the slide will disappear in a few minutes. That keeps it anonymous, and then I can, of course, watch the chat and keep dishing up questions and feed them to the experts. And we'll try to get to all of your questions in our last 45 minutes. So our guests today will also have their business cards in the back. I think they're already back there for contact information if you want to follow up with them following our session today. Okay, let me introduce our speakers today. Camille Kellison, local sales manager of KNDU TV. Camille is an optimistic and enthusiastic sales professional with over 25 years of sales experience in insurance sales, nonprofit organizations, and media. She is currently the local sales manager of KNDU TV, leading a team of 10. She excels at helping her staff develop skills to keep up with the changing landscape of media consumption and developing customized media plans for their clients to help grow their businesses. Camille believes that the positive encouragement, accountability, and open communication is the best motivator for her team. Outside of work, Camille enjoys hiking, attending live music, and spending time with her grandson. Jennifer Cunnington is a native Oregonian from Bend, Oregon, growing up in Portland and earning a BA degree in communications and public relations from Marylhurst University and a professional certificate in project management from Portland State University. Jennifer has held several pivotal positions within the mortgage industry, beginning with operations, moving on to subprime lending sales, and eventually becoming an escrow officer. After over 10 years, she decided to help clients on the front end of the process as a loan officer, branch manager to help ensure successful closings and happy experiences. Jennifer has held local roles in area lending management for STCU and Movement Mortgage, and is now with Q Home Loans in Kennewick. Outside of work, Jennifer and her husband love to travel everywhere, seeking out new experiences to broaden their local and world perspective. She plays a lot of tennis, loves to listen to music, EDM, and read. Charities benefiting animals, children, and women are also important to her. Christy Lawrence, Mighty Sales. Sorry, I just had a brain like fog. Christy's the owner of Mighty Growth, a consulting company that helps small businesses scale to $1 million and beyond in annual revenue. She has 20 years of sales and marketing experience. Her experience ranges from working for established Fortune 500 companies to helping emerging startups gain traction. She's an expert on creating powerful messaging and strategies to increase sales. Let's give a big round of applause to our experts today. Camille, why don't you kick us off?
All right. Thank you for having me. It's fun to be back here. I actually worked for the chamber 11 years ago, so it's cool to be back here on this side. My topic is motivating sales team, finding ways for everyone to win. How many of you actually lead a sales team? I was thinking the chamber would have some business owners and managers, and then how many of you are part of a sales team? So I think there's going to be some things here for you too, maybe things that you could take back to your managers or your owners and say, hey, have you ever thought of doing these things or implementing these things? So when I took over as sales manager with CanDU, we were at a time where we had a couple key salespeople leave and we were really short staffed. And then I had been in sales in the sales team for several years. And so I had to hire actually I hired 2 people to take over for myself. And then we ended up having to really staff up. So I was kind of in a good place in that position because I could kind of look at people that, you know, I thought would be a good fit for our team and kind of start fresh. So that was actually a positive thing. So thinking about what makes a good team, if you're starting from the beginning, if you're just putting a team together, what makes a good team? I look for positive, growth-minded people. So when I'm interviewing for people, I'm looking for people that, you know, maybe they're even coming from a different industry. Maybe they've never done media, but they are, you know, willing and able to learn new things. And I'm looking for people that have had success, maybe in other industries too. So not necessarily a salesperson. I think that's the thing with sales is that you can hire people from different industries because for the most part, sales is sales. We're really all selling something, right? Even your kids are selling you something all the time. We learn to be salespeople when we're a kid in the grocery store and we're like, hey mom, can I have that candy bar? You know, I've been good all day and we're already like kind of giving her reasons for something. I'm looking for high quality people with a strong drive to succeed. I'm looking for people that are collaborative in nature. Our team right now is the best at this. I think of any team we've had at CanDU. When I go into the sales area, they are bouncing ideas off of each other. They are sharing leads, which is kind of unbelievable in a sales environment. You know, hey, I haven't gotten anywhere with this prospect. I think you might be a better fit. So looking for people that are not so, you know, what's the word I want? They're willing to share and not just takers, but givers and collaborative in nature. People that can see the big picture, I think is really important. I look for diversity within the sales team. So I don't want to have the same of every, you know, I don't want the same type of person for every role. I want some diversity. I like having people with different backgrounds, maybe different industries in their backgrounds, people, different walks of life. We have, you know, moms, we have more mature people, men and women equally. And I think that just gives a better flow of ideas. And there are people that are better fit for some clients than others. So I think having diversity is a big piece within the sales team. And then recognizing that not everybody sells the same. That was a big eye opener for me when I went into management, is watching people sell differently than I do. I'm a very relational seller. So when I go in, I remember selling a chamber membership to you, Joe, going in and talking to you and meeting you. And,
Doctor everywhere.
right? And just, you know, getting to know people. So I'm a relational seller. I have people on my staff that are informational sellers. They will go in with their PowerPoints and they will give you all the facts and figures until you have no other decision but to buy CanDU rather than another station. So watching people kind of be successful doing things different than I do is huge. I think years ago, we kind of in sales, everybody had a script, and I've hired people that have said, you know, where's your script? You know, would you have a script that I could look at? No, we don't use scripts. We speak from the heart, we find out what our clients want, and we go from there. So I think understanding that not everybody sells the same as you do if you're kind of starting as the salesperson in your organization and then going into management. I think that's really important is to understand that we're all different and we all have different skills, and that's okay. Okay, so there we go. Okay. So what kind of environment do you need to set up for your team to have success? I think you need a workplace that works for your salespeople, right? You need to have all the tools in place. They need to have, you know, if they're going to be outside sales, they need a laptop for being out in the field. They need to have support staff back in the office. They need to be able, if you're sending your people out in the field, they need to have somebody that they can call back in the office and say, hey, I need this proposal tweaked, or I need this to be done and back in the office. Giving them all the tools that they need to be successful. I think an open door, you know, access to management is super important. Being approachable, being accessible to them. You know, my sales staff knows that they can call me all the time, they can text me, and I'm gonna 90% of the time I'm gonna answer. And I think I haven't always had that with management, and so I value that in being that for my team, because sometimes you do need a quick answer. Having a training plan in place for your salespeople, I think is really important. Not just, you know, letting them wing it, or, you know, the sink or swim kind of training, but really having a training plan in place, thinking about yourself, like, if I were to start this business from the beginning, what would I need to know? And that's not necessarily just product knowledge, that's also just the sum. When I was in insurance, we had a gal, she had all the product knowledge and she wasn't selling it. I couldn't figure out what was the deal. She was so smart. She was so knowledgeable about the products and stuff. So I sat with her, and this was, you know, auto insurance. So she'd, you know, have a phone call with a prospect, and she'd go through everything, and she'd give them a quote. And then she'd say, okay, thanks, let me know. You know, she wasn't asking for the sell. So having all the product knowledge, but not knowing, you know, how to ask for the sale at the end was a huge part that she was missing. So I think the training plan is not just the product knowledge, but also, you know, how to sell. Does your team know what's expected of you? This is another part of setting them up for success. And I say, you know, that part of that is sharing budgets with them, letting them know what the piece of the pie is that you're expecting from them is really important. Are their goals clear? If they're meeting their goals, are there other things, you know, that you're expecting of them that aren't necessarily, we think in terms of salespeople that, you know, it's a dollar amount sold or a certain amount of products. But it's not just that, it's, you know, what are the things, you know, how they're interacting with, you know, this other sales staff, that's important. How they might be interacting with the support staff is important. So letting your whole sales staff know what's expected of them, I think is super important. So what motivates your sales staff? I think different people are motivated by different things. That's what I've seen. I have a staff that really values getting off early on Fridays. So sometimes that's the incentive. I think we think that when we're thinking of salespeople, we're thinking like incentives, bonuses, commissions, those types of things, but there's a lot more that will motivate your salespeople. Validation, you know, we hear about the love languages and relationships, but I think that knowing your sales staff's love language is just as important. Knowing what, you know, is important to them. So remembering to, you know, celebrate the wins often is really important. And give them affirmation. One thing I was asking my staff, you know, what do I do right? So I could include that, like what motivates. And they said, one of the salespeople said, well, I like it that when you call me to your office, I don't automatically think I'm in trouble. So I think having that, you know, friendly thing too is motivating, or at least not demotivating. So early release, we talked about that. Flex time, working from home. A lot of people now value having that flex time, having the ability to say, hey, you know, this day I'm going to be working from home, and just checking in and, you know, being set up for success in that way too, so that they can do what they need to, where they need to. I think that's going to be a huge thing going forward. Managers are all being asked to accommodate their staff more and more. And it's just kind of the way the world is working now. So we have to stay up with that. And then lastly, management follows through with what they say they're gonna do. So I think, you know, that's really actually demotivating when management will say, oh, I'll look into that for you, and then they don't. I think it's really important as a manager to follow through with what you say you're gonna do and to keep those promises. And if it's something that's important to your staff, to take it seriously, even if it's something that you don't understand. Sometimes I don't understand why something's important to a salesperson, but I have to address it. And I think just being a manager that follows through in that way is very motivating. So last slide, things your team needs but may not know or tell you. I think one of the most important things that your team needs that they may not even know that they need is time with each other. So kind of like what I was talking about when they're collaborating, I hear them learning from each other. And the staff that I have that is out of the office more than in the office, I see that in things, you know, that they don't know that maybe some of the other staff that are more in the office have learned. So I think they learn a lot from each other. They're bouncing nice ideas off of each other, and they're just growing to know each other better. And that's always going to be a good thing. I think another thing that your staff needs that they might not know how to tell you is zero tolerance for drama. And I have learned a lot from, have you guys heard of Cy Wakeman? Cy Wakeman. She is a speaker, business speaker, that's her thing, is kind of getting the drama out of the workplace. So if that's something that you guys have dealt with in your office, she's a really good resource for that. So just making sure everybody understands they can come to you, talk to you if there's a situation, you're gonna deal with it, and but just not tolerating anything. Having clear expectations of your sales staff and boundaries, you know, what you're willing to accommodate, what you can't accommodate. I think, you know, the more that they understand and know what your thoughts are, what your expectations are, the better. And then lastly, I think your team needs time with you. So at our station, we have weekly meetings. I have a weekly meeting with my manager. My sales staff has a weekly meeting with me. And, you know, we can talk about anything. We can talk about challenges that they're having. You know, there's a lot of personal stuff worked in there too. And I think that's important. You know, I think most people now, most staff people, they want a manager that cares about them and even their personal lives. That's very important. So I think having that time to talk about issues that they're having, and you know, sometimes we talk about kids and spouses and all that stuff. And I think that's fine, but your sales staff needs time with you as well. And I have also worked with a couple different websites for personality styles. And I don't have this on there, but a couple of them you've probably heard of Myers-Briggs. That's a really good one. And then there's also this, that's kind of an older one. Just, I don't know how many of you have heard of Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies, but that is my favorite one for salespeople. It talks about how people handle expectations of them. So you have there's 4 different tendencies. There's the upholder, the questioner, the obliger, and the rebel. So if you have an upholder, that person might, if it's something that you've asked them to do, they will do it because you asked. If you have a questioner on your staff, they'll do it, but only if you tell them why. And then if you have a rebel on your staff, they won't do it unless it's their idea. So that helps when you're going to them and you're asking for something. You kind of know how to present it in the way that they're going to be, okay, I need to do this. So I found that one to be really good when we're working with salespeople. And that is all I have. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Camille. That was fantastic. And I think, you know, Camille provided a natural segue for me to go into what we call needs-based selling, because you mentioned that you were very relational in selling. And I think that that's really what is so important to all of us now. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. In my industry, I think that that is a paramount skill. And so we'll kind of take a deeper dive into that skill. So there's the clicker. Oh,
Button to the right.
I'm not gonna wear that. I guess we should have practice with the clicker before we got up there. We were just a little bit too dangerous. Okay. Okay, so needs-based selling. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what exactly is needs-based selling? Well, it's basically also known as consultative selling, right? So it seeks to actually understand the customer's needs and goals in lieu of being more transactional, right? So a lot of times when we think about sales, we think about, just getting the sale, doing the deal, that one transaction, but there's so much more to that. And creating a business that is flourishing and can give back to you in the form of referrals through happy clients, that's really what we need to focus on. Okay. It also reviews specific challenges to align a particular product or service that provides a solution that particular client needs. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It recognizes that every customer has their own specific needs. So definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation, i.e. it is customer-centric. Okay. So process of needs-based selling, we'll kind of touch on that because I think it's really important to kind of have a game plan of how to go through this process. This really involves first, of course, building rapport with your client, getting to know them, and how much better you know them also helps you create value in that relationship. Then you move on to identifying their specific needs, their challenges and their goals that they might have, because of course in sales, if we're selling a product or service, of course, we're looking to provide a solution. And of course, that's number 3, which is matching a personalized service or product to provide that ideal solution. We'll go into that. And then of course, ending up with some thoughtful follow-up. How do we thoughtfully in today's day and age follow up with clients so that we can remain top of mind and hopefully valuable to them? So let's touch on kind of our first step in this process, which is building a rapport to create value. The last couple of years have been obviously a challenge to most of us. And we entered into an interesting age of kind of an arm's length communication style, right? We went from just being around each other all the time and maybe even taking for granted a little bit that we could just meet up with people anytime we wanted and they would be willing to meet up with that or with us. But then, of course, the pandemic hit and slowly we got into a situation where people had to become kind of cocooned in a way. And so over time, we became that more arm's length in nature. And so people really became reticent to meet in person. And because of that, as we text, we email, we ended up on Zoom, which is still good when we can't get in front of each other. It just really hindered us from getting to know each other in a different way. Having that one-on-one contact where we could spend some quality time with one another and take a deeper dive to build a relationship. And in sales, that's what really we're seeking to do is build those relationships. Of course, as I mentioned before, so we can, have enduring clients over time. So again, we didn't always truly get to know these people. And because of that, we never really found out what their needs were. So a lot of the time, because we were able just to talk to them on the phone, maybe text with them, email, and I just mentioned Zoom or Teams, they just gave us enough information. A lot of people were pressed for time, or maybe they just got fatigued of communicating that way. So maybe we weren't able to ask the right questions because we were the same way. So we never really got to the bottom of what their challenge might have been. And so it's so important because then we weren't able to build those relationships either. When we take a deeper dive now to build that rapport and get to know people, we're finding out what the common denominators are that might help us easily go into that relationship. So how were they referred to us? Do our kids know each other? Did we get referred from somebody that maybe we work with? Is it sports? Any of these things will lead to those common denominators that can help us kind of kick off that conversation. So that's a great thing. And naturally, that will help us create a really comfortable environment, more so than before. You know, we're kind of getting back to basics now, that will help them open up and provide that information to us that we need. It's the details that mean all the difference, to find out really what they need. Again, so we can provide that that necessary or that solution going forward. So after we're starting to get to know the client, of course, we're building that rapport. We want to then take it a little bit step further, and we want to really start to engage with them. How do we do that? Really, we want to start by actively listening. So I know that that's really hard. We just talked about kind of coming out of the pandemic. We all see now that we're a little rushed, and now we take into account the season, right? It's summer. You know, there's a myriad of things that could be affecting any one of us at any time during the day. But when it comes to sales, if we're truly going to start to create that value for someone, we need to kind of put aside everything else and really engage with that client in front of us. And by actively listening, then we can start to kind of pick up on some things that they might need. What are some challenges that they're having? That can then lead us into the ability to ask really relevant questions, right? And relevant questions aren't just, gee, how's the weather? You know, we can kind of get through the small talk, and then we can really take that deeper dive into what's really your need. And am I the right person to help you? Will my product or service be the right solution for you? During that engagement process, of course, being present, you know, finding out what they need in between A and Z is really big. You know, I always call it kind of like a check under the hood. You know, we have one chance to kind of make a first impression. So if this is your first conversation or first interaction with somebody, it's just so important that, you know, the presence is there, and that allows you to start building that trust as well. Building trust too, the more that you ask those thoughtful questions, they give you answers, you continue to build on that conversation. They're going to start to see you as an expert, and that's where you can identify ways that you can start creating value. So that's really big. Okay. And then of course, that value piece is what eventually leads to repeat business, the referrals, and needs-based selling. And it started with what Camille was talking about sales teams. You know, it's the relational aspect that is just so important. Equally as important, once we, you know, get through this first conversation, finding out the basis for what our goal might be, is figuring out too, what is the best way to actually communicate with them. So we talked about, you know, all of us kind of struggled, you know, before the pandemic, we kind of took for granted how we communicated with people. Again, it was that luxury of being able to meet with anyone at any given time. Then we halted, and we really had to reset and figure out how to, in a consultative way, meet people where they were, and even taking into account where we were as well. So we kind of sometimes had a rub there, and it became, you know, super challenging. But now we are getting back into that luxury where we can say, okay, thanks so much for this initial conversation. We're building that rapport again. What is your preferred way to be communicated with? Time of day, text message, email. Of course, we're eventually gonna have to hook up again on the phone or in person. But I think that salespeople miss this a lot. You know, we're so focused on ourselves because most of the time salespeople are really, really goal focused, right? They're goal focused on getting the sale, closing the transaction, you know, telling somebody so much about our product or service. We forget to also take a step back and say, hey, client, how will you best receive information that I eventually will give you after we go into the next steps of the process, right? So I think that that's really, really important. And that ability to actually connect with them is priceless, because sometimes, you know, we'll be able to block out our day and we'll go, oh my gosh, I didn't call Sally back, right? Well, it's 4:45 on a Friday. Do you think they're really going to be available and open to connecting with you to hear about something so important as your particular product or service that might be solving a problem for them? Maybe, but we need to find out in advance if that will be the case. Now, a little tip I put on here too is having a template to help with a flow. So a lot of salespeople, they get kind of analysis paralysis. So how many salespeople do we have in the room that, and maybe even on Zoom, maybe they're cool with tackling those hard things first in the morning, getting it all done, maybe, calling some of the challenging folks or, the folks that have bigger problems, not just the easy ones. And they're like, where do I even start? So, sometimes sales folks, even on a mojo plays, I think a really big part in it sometimes, but even on a great day, sometimes sales folks will go, okay, I feel good right now, I'm gonna call somebody, right? But they'll call somebody and then they'll be like, hi. Well, that's where I think a template can really play a valuable role. For us in the mortgage business, it's a loan application. I was taught when I first started in the business that the loan application really tells the story. And if any of you have ever filled out a loan application or anything, even whether it be a car, a home, what have you, it's very process oriented. It starts with your vitals, your name, address, phone number, email address, but then it goes a step further, starts talking about your home life, where you live, really important, your employment, assets. So that's all really important information that mortgage folks like me take into account, but it's also a very conversational template. So even if you're not in the mortgage biz, pretty much every type of sales has some form of template that you use. It could be a call sheet, product sheet, it could be a work order, anything like that. Really, the way that these documents are structured, it's very conversational. I don't know if you've ever looked at it like that, but that's how I look at a loan application. So you might want to take a look into what your industry is using, and it could really be a valuable tool to you. All right, so we built that rapport, we learned a little bit about them, we figured out how best to hopefully communicate with them. Now we're going to move on to the next step, which is identifying their needs, challenges, and goals. And, really this is just taking a little bit of a deeper dive here. So we want to find out really what's needed now. And in any sales experience, people initially might say, this is what I need now, but that might not always be the case, right? And so that's where that deeper dive is so valuable. And how many times too have we talked to a client and they'll say, well, I think I just need this. But based on our initial conversation, we think that we can help them in a much better way. And so all things to think about. I also ask clients what they're hoping to accomplish. So in any industry, yes, we have a product or service to sell, but really what are they trying to accomplish? What's their end goal? And so that might change the product or service that we actually offer too. And then most importantly, how can you assist them? So remember, we are wanting to create value, we want to be the expert, and we want to build that lasting relationship. So how are you, not just your product or service, because ultimately they're going to be buying from you, but how will you actually assist them and help them out? Next up, identify potential challenges. So we might find out initially what they think they need or want, but what might be their potential challenges that not only we have to overcome, but they have to overcome. So in sales, we can have a wonderful first conversation with someone and then, we'll never hear from them again. Who has experienced that? We can call it ghosting. I mean, they stepped out on us, whatever. But sometimes I'm like, I'm really hurt because a lot of us in sales, we put our heart and soul into a consultative experience. And then if someone doesn't get back to you or goes with someone else, God forbid, with the same product or service, but we don't think that they gave them nearly the time and attention that we did, that hurts us because we want them to be absolutely taken care of, right? So most of the time that happens because we did not effectively address any of their fears, their concerns, to move forward, right? So we can again talk about their needs, their wants, but did we actually talk to them about, gosh, what scares you about this process? What concerns might you have? Did they have a prior experience that didn't go well? Or better yet, did they hear from a friend or a family member who had an experience that didn't go well? And, you know, that may or may not have been true, but it's like telephone, right? You're like, oh my gosh, my aunt's sister's mother's cousin, you know, had a really bad experience with that person, but how do we even know what really happened unless they experienced it themselves? Again, we've got media and news and just community talk that might be reporting that resources are unavailable. But we know as salespeople that those resources are absolutely available. So all those things can be roadblocks that we've got to be able to help them clear in order to proceed so that we can get them to move forward to the next step. And again, dispelling those challenges and educating on opportunities are just huge. And finally, finding out about future goals is the next part of the process, because ultimately we want to help them now. We want to help them in the future, right? Because we have a saying in the mortgage business, we want to be their lender for life. And I always thought that that was a little campy when I first heard it, but ultimately, you want to be able to help them in an enduring way as you go forward. Everybody has changes in life. They all know. You know, they all maybe have a big sphere that they could refer you to. You could help family. There's just a million ways that you can end up helping just one person if you take the time to invest in them and find out, you know, what they need. I just mentioned potential life changes as well, so that's big. One client, many, many opportunities. Okay. So moving on, of course, now we've identified those needs, those challenges, maybe future goals. We want to find out the best way to match them with our service or product that will help provide an ideal solution. And I actually say ideal solution because one size does not fit all. And I know no matter what the industry, there is a product or service that is probably a bestseller. Right. So in any of our industries, we probably have something that's just like a go-to that most people will probably want, or that the salesperson is maybe really comfortable selling. And so they'll just kind of go to that without really taking the time to dive deeper. Especially in the mortgage business now, there's always a new product that's coming out that might fit the needs of a client more, but we really do have to take the time to figure out what that is. And then be able to share that information. So we've got to do some work too. So that analysis leads to identifying, of course, that product or service. And ultimately that leads us to providing a value added option. What will be the best option for them that we have available that will be the best benefit to them? And again, it's really up to us because all that information that we've gathered through active listening, considerate questioning, review their challenges, and planning for goals will help provide that ideal solution. So we personalized it. Now we want to present it to them. And I don't know how many salespeople really take this into account because when I first started, I just only knew what I knew, right? So I present it in the best way that I knew how. And as kind of a type A, you know, kind of one lane person, it may not have been the best way and probably wasn't the best way most of the time for the client. And so we really do have to take care in how we present it. And again, it goes back to asking the client in the beginning, how is it best to communicate with you? How is it best to have you in receiving mode so that I can still kind of morph my presentation into a way that you can receive it the best. But I want them to be able to understand it and kind of take it in and be able to move forward. So in my industry, people are starting, of course, to meet in person. And I love that because a lot of us in this room will appreciate that more because it creates more buy-in. You know, most of the time if they've met with you and we see each other eye to eye, then that will set us up for success in the future. Also visual aids, charts and graphs, a lot of us use those, how those maybe our product or service might help them with projections in the future for success. We have kind of a flyer that I put together sometimes for folks for the cost of waiting to buy a house, because a lot of people don't understand right now that if you wait because the interest rates are higher, you're going to miss out on building equity right now too. So we can maybe fix the interest rate later with a refinance, when interest rates improve, but we'll have already missed out on that equity bill, okay? And then finally, you want to involve your client in the decision-making process. Again, that one size fits all, it doesn't. And so you want to ask for feedback. That's why I love to meet with people face to face so much, because we ask, does this really meet your needs? Does it sound good to you? Are we on the same page? During that time too, it's so great to be able to address questions that come up. Again, any hurdles to overcome, what we talked about before, we don't want anybody ghosting us. And it's not about us putting in the time, because that's what we signed up to do. But more importantly is that we address those fears and concerns and kind of clear the path so we can move on to that next step. And confirming intent to proceed to get to yes. And that, of course, like I said, will help clear that path to get to that next step, and hopefully we can have a successful outcome. So hopefully we've had this successful outcome. How do we thoughtfully follow up with people? And this is just huge, because obviously consistency is the key. Consistency really yields the results. It keeps you top of mind. And that's our goal, right? Because we want to be their only choice for our particular product or service. Again, coming back to the mortgage business, people will see something online, they'll be talking to a friend at a sports game, and there's only so much we can do sometimes, but it really does help to have a good plan of action for follow-up in place, so that we can at least help ourselves help them keep us top of mind. I love interval follow-up. What this means is I put 1, 3, 6, 12, 24. And anytime we close a sale or provide a product or service, right? I love to follow up a month after doing so. Now, again, in lending, I like to follow up and right as their first payment's becoming due. Because right after closing, everybody gets a ton of mailers from all sorts of companies. They get information on public record, and they get a little confused of, oh my gosh, it's the first of the next month. Who do I make my first payment to? So again, I'm creating value by contacting them, asking them how they're doing. Are they getting settled? Do you need the information on how to make your first payment? Super valuable. And of course, then that opens us up where we can answer more questions, and they might even refer us to somebody they know because they're so happy with us at that time. 90 days, another time to follow up. 6 months, they should be pretty settled, but we also, want to follow up again and ask if our product or service is still performing for them. Things can change in people's lives at any time. And so that's a big time. Of course, annual reviews are huge. If you're not doing annual reviews with your clients, I would press upon you to do so. Why? Because it's so important to find out, again, if there are any life changes. And what I do is I create a letter every year thanking them for their business. I also send them a copy of their final settlement statement, which is all the stuff that they need for their taxes. And do we all know, we scramble when we go to prepare our taxes and we don't have that really important document, maybe from a transaction. So that's good that we can provide that. And then I follow up with a call, again, just to check in, to see if I can provide any other value. Sometimes too, if you've gotten close to your client, which is the goal, you can ask for a referral or even a review. So that's really good. Personalized follow-up on the how. Handwritten cards are coming back in popularity. If you feel really comfortable, depending on your industry, you can start to do pop buys again. I love to just stop by, and we're really becoming more open to that now. And of course, meetups with people, make appointments with people, have coffee, have lunch. It's great. And that's when you can really build your referral base as well. CRMs, that's those contact management systems that will help you create automated campaigns. You can send out emails, also text messages. So we all get bombarded with emails, right? We want to sometimes just be able to send a quick text message and keep ourselves top of mind. Also allows us to incubate people who might not be able to move forward now. Of course, setting items of value, books, maybe articles, that are relevant to folks. That's also great. It shows them that you care and that you're thinking about them. We've also got certain software programs, I'm sure you all do in your industries as well, that we can sign our clients up for and provides item of value. Every Monday, I have a software program that gives me a read on who has been active the following week, and I can contact them that way. Of course, social media, people announce things that they're doing in their lives, like changes. This allows us to also connect in that way. And really super important is that they've taken out or taken time out of their day to give you a review, to give them thanks for that. I don't know how many of you take time to actually give reviews, but if you provided excellent service and someone's actually recognizing you for that, amazing. Finally, establish some systems for all this stuff. It can just be so overwhelming every day. Block out time on your calendar to follow up with people. Automate those posts as we talked about. Set future reminders. And also, some of these software programs do have dashboards where you can really utilize that so you don't have to have everything be manual. Okay. So I've given you a handout as well. It's got some wonderful conversation starters. In addition to any of your maybe templates that you already have that you may not already use, to start those conversations with people, to build that rapport and create value. Also examples of CRMs, those contact management systems. If you don't have one already, I would encourage you to at least take a look at these, because anything that can be automated in your business, but still remain personal in nature is wonderful. And then of course, some books that we should all know and love. Just some options there. That's part of the giveaway today as well. So I hope that this has been helpful. This is something that as salespeople, we live every day. And of course, we could go into more detail, but I hope that it's a refresher and that it's of value. Thank you.
I don't have any slides, so I don't know. That's right. So before I dive in and go in depth, I'm going to be talking a lot about follow-up and flight persistence and how to keep conversations going with a long lead time. I would love to hear from a few of you guys in the room and maybe somebody on Zoom to get a sense of what types of products or services you're selling and what your average sales cycle is. So how long does it take from your first conversation till that person becomes a customer on average? So someone over here on the right side of the room want to share?
We sell carpet cleaning and other floor services.
Awesome.
And for larger contracts, they can take up to a month. Smaller ones, just a day or two.
Awesome. So pretty short sales cycle for you guys. Someone in the middle of the room?
Well, I work for an home care agency, and for us ourselves, we have 24 hours to make contact, and we have a week to make sure the client is consulted, admitted into the home, and the caregivers.
Okay, so you have a pretty short.
Very short,
Yeah, awesome.
especially if you're working with state.
Yeah, absolutely. And then someone over here on this side of the room? Arm wrestle.
I'm a financial advisor, so yeah, building relationships is key. So sometimes it can take weeks or months or years.
Years, right? I actually have a client that's in the financial planning industry, and he just had somebody become a client that he initially contacted like 15 years ago, right? And had a relationship with. So that's a very long sales cycle. So anywhere from days to years. Is there someone on Zoom that wants to share?
Yes.
Okay, I can't stare them down and make that. Okay, so the reason I wanted to get that sense is because all of us have different sales cycles, and a lot of times we get an initial lead, whether it's a referral source, right? So sometimes it's not just the sale, but who's that person that's going to be referring us business. We meet them, we have this connection, and making those initial connections is hard, right? It's hard to get someone to tell you who they are, tell you what they're interested in, get to learn about your product, and then we get busy and things happen, and we don't always nurture those leads, those COIs the way that we should or the way that we could to generate business. So I am going to share kind of some compelling statistics about why follow-up is one of the most important parts of the sales process. So I'm gonna let you guys guess, but what percent of sales do you guys think happens on the first contact in general when we think about sales in general? Any guesses? 5. You know the statistic? 2. So the answer is 2. So 2%. So 98% of sales don't happen in the first conversation. So that means if you want to make sales, you probably have to have more than one conversation most of the time to get it done. So this is a statistic that I thought was phenomenal and shocking to me, but 60% of customers reject offers 4 times before making a purchase decision. That's crazy, right? So we think someone says no, or they're not sure, and we're like, we don't want to bother them. We don't want to be annoying. If they wanted to talk to us, they would call us. Turns out that's not the case. And so how do we do this? How do we actually generate business over the long term? So instead of slides, you guys have a handout. And the reason I call this polite persistence is I actually was working with a client and they had a customer that they had been trying to win for a really long time. They are an automated air sealing company and they work with high production builders. And this is a national home builder, really busy, really hard to move the building industry to make changes over time. And one of the things that that customer said when they became a customer for this client was, we really appreciate your polite persistence. And I was like, that is the best compliment to a salesperson. And how do we actually do this in a consistent way for our clients that we can have a big impact? So there's 5 things that we're going to talk about that are going to really help you to kind of break through that follow-up and that inertia that happens. So before we dive into this, I want to talk about some of the obstacles that happen to get in the way as salespeople to polite persistence. So I'm going to share some of the things that I hear a lot from clients like, well, I would follow up, but so some of them are, I don't want to be annoying. I don't have time. What are some of the other things that come up for you guys or that you guys hear from other people when it comes to why reasons not to follow up? They're just shopping. Yeah. They already said no. They already said no. Yeah. Any other ones that you guys can think of? So those are all probably true sometimes, right? Like I am sure there were times for this client when we were reaching out and the customer wasn't responding that they were like, you guys are being annoying. And they were being annoying because they were kind of ghosting us, right? So just because we're being annoying occasionally doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing the work and putting in the effort. People are busy. Maybe they have already in that moment decided no for that specific time, but that doesn't, I always say not right now doesn't mean not ever. But how do we do this in a way where we're cultivating those positive relationships? So the first thing is pace. So being really mindful about how often and how that you're following up. What is the frequency? So if you have a really short sales cycle, that frequency is going to be a little bit more intense than if you have a longer sales cycle. It is also going to vary if you have somebody who's if you're doing cold outreach, right? I do focus more on blitzes where you're doing kind of focused outreach to that one particular person or group of people in a short period of time, then pausing that and then coming back. Versus if it's somebody that you have an existing relationship with, that pace might look a little bit different. Also varying the pace, right? So sometimes we're like, okay, I'm going to follow up with this person every 2 weeks. Then they start to be trained like, okay, it's like the second Tuesday of the month. They're probably going to call me. So thinking about, okay, maybe I'm going to follow up every 2 weeks with this potential client or this COI or this referral source. But then after a period of time, I'm going to wait and follow up once a month. Right. And then, oh, we're starting to get some traction. So I might start following up again, but being really mindful and intentional of what's the right pace for your sales cycle and your customer, where they're at in the buying cycle and what your relationship is with them. The other thing I will say on pace, if you are ever just out and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about this potential COI or I'm thinking about this potential client, just reach out. If they're coming across your mind, more often than not, I'd say trust your intuition on it. And 2 times in the last week, I had situations where I was literally just getting ready to call you. And it's so much more powerful as a salesperson to be on the proactive side than on the reactive side of that. Plan. So the second principle on polite persistence is plan. Always have a plan. So when you finish a point of contact with somebody, Whether it's something that you've agreed upon with that person, or it's something that internally you've written down and notated, what is your next action item with that person? So maybe they said something in the conversation about what their favorite food is or their favorite restaurant. And so you're like, okay, in 2 weeks, I'm going to send them a gift certificate to their favorite restaurant, right? So you can kind of use the pace. I don't have to do it right now when they just told me, but now I know what I want to do next to engage with that person. I like to call it leaving breadcrumbs for yourself, because I think you mentioned for salespeople, sometimes we get that inertia. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't know why to reach out. I say this is kind of going to move into purpose too, but the least effective follow-up for somebody is, hey, I just want to check in. How are you doing? There are times when maybe that is all you've got, and so it's better than nothing, but it's not adding any value. So if you plan in advance what that next follow-up is, then you don't have that inertia and you can think ahead and be prepared, and it makes it a lot easier for you and more relevant for the client. So that leads into our third one, which is purpose. Anytime you're following up, what is the purpose of that follow-up? What value are you adding for that client? So a lot of times it might be you have a list of resources and you're like, okay, what's a podcast that I could send them that they might be interested in? Is there an industry change or a policy change that's happened that they might be interested in that's relevant to my business? Did I meet somebody who knew them, right? But there's always, if you can always have a purpose. The reason I'm reaching out today is because, even if you don't say that exactly, but if you know that, you're going to be building relationship and credibility with that potential prospect or COI in a much deeper level than if you're just checking in to see how they're doing and want to know where they're at in the decision-making process. The fourth one I put is balancing personal and professional. So this is going to depend on your sales cycle oftentimes, but the more you can balance those interactions between personal and professional interactions, the deeper the relationship is going to be. So if somebody, for example, says something about their family or something about a hobby or something about an interest, and you can kind of bring in some of those into your follow-up, like, hey, you had mentioned you really like pickleball. Here's this new great pickleball racket that I heard about. Have you heard about this? I'm just making up, I don't know anything about pickleball. I hear it's trending. Or even if it's an article like, oh, that's so funny. I just read this article about pickleball that I thought you'd get a kick out of. It really helps understanding you as a person and not just a salesperson. And so always finding ways to bridge personal and professional follow-up can really help too. So it doesn't just feel like, okay, let's talk about mortgage rates again. I know we've talked about what rates are doing the last 15 times that I've talked to you. I'm being a little bit facetious, but finding ways to you're like, no. The more we can balance that out, it keeps it fresh for them too, which is really, really helpful. And then you did a great job of talking about this, but post-sale, right? A lot of times when we have long lead times or we've cultivated a relationship with somebody for a long time and then they write us a check and then we stop the follow-up. So all of a sudden it's been a year and we've been talking to this person regularly. They become a customer and what happens? We're like, bye, see you later. They take the check. And so figuring out how do you maintain that momentum after the sale. And that's really important, not just for referrals, but also for retention in your clients too. People want to feel seen and heard and valued. And so when you're doing all of these things together, it's really helping you to meet their needs as a human, which helps create long-term lasting relationships and more sales. So I have one more statistic for you guys before we jump into questions. So this is going to be like a blank. So this statistic is 81% of sales occur. Oh, I should do it the wrong way. I'm just going to tell you. But 81% of sales occur on the 5th to 12th contact. So that's a lot of touch points for people. And so Jennifer, you did a great job of this, but brainstorming in advance, what are 12 ways that I could interact with my leads that are unique, that are interesting, that balance personal and professional, that add value, and mixing it up so it's not always just an email or it's not always just a phone call, that will set you up for success so that you're not having to think and running into your own inertia every time before you get started. So that's what I have on our 5 steps. I think we are diving questions now.
Yes, so if you're here in the room, you can just either raise your hand or you can text me if you want to stay anonymous, and I'll ask the question for you. If you're on Zoom, just put it in the chat, and let's try to get a question from everyone if we can. Who's first? Everyone.
You had mentioned about asking for the sales. So
Mhm.
what's your, I guess, advice on the best, like your way of doing that, like to ask for a sale?
I think it kind of depends on what it is you're selling, but just finding out if you have, explain everything, like, do you understand everything that we've gone over? Do you have any questions for me? How is that rate, or how is the sounding to you? I think that you had said that too, does it sound good to you? Getting their feedback, I think, and then just saying, are you ready to move forward?
Okay.
I think is good.
I'll add on that. One thing that I found really helpful is actually talking about, depending on where you're at in the sales cycle. So if you're kind of at the decision point, actually walking through, here's what it will look like. Here's what the next steps are. So when you're ready to move forward, here's the next 2 or 3 things that are going to happen. So once you give me the green light, we'll start A. Then it makes it really easy to be like,
Yeah.
are you ready to move forward? And they know exactly what's happening next when they say this.
And I think to add to that too, when you go to those next steps, it makes them more excited about the whole thing. So like for us in our industry, we can start talking about writing a script. Maybe for you, you're in the mortgage industry, talking about the house, maybe, bringing that back up. I think whatever the thing is that they're going to receive by saying yes, getting them excited about that thing, I think is helpful.
So combating no's. So what's your guys' advice on that? If they've already said no, the follow-up message after that.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna really depend on what that conversation relationship was moving in. But whenever somebody says no, I think the most important thing that we need to do is hear that and not try and counteract the no, right? So if somebody says, no, thank you, or decide to go a different direction, thank you so much for letting me know. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. Would you mind if I reach out to you again in a month? Or right, depending on what it is. So really honoring the no, giving some space for them to feel like you're not going to try to keep selling me and then ask for permission to follow up in the future. Or hey, if we ever end up having some resources that I think you might find valuable, would you mind if I send those to you?
Yeah, I agree too. And most of the time, as we talked about, there's a common denominator potentially on how they initially got to you. So it's probably going back to that common denominator, and finding out if you can build on that, just starting from scratch a little bit, taking a step back. Second thing is, it's overcoming those fears and concerns. Did we really tackle some of those hurdles? Because they clearly most of the time have a need that they are coming to you to fill. So it's a no, but why is it a no? And again, like Christy's saying, we don't want to push them. That's not our role at all. We're consultative, right? But it behooves us to maybe start from scratch and go back and say, okay, well, we were coupled up in the beginning because you had a need. Has that need changed? Has it gone away? Because if it's still there, then what aren't we doing? Or maybe our product or service just isn't right for you. And so it's then maybe referring them to someone else. It's not all about us. We don't always hold the keys, but to Christy's point too, we want to make sure that you're taken care of. And it pains me personally. It's not about me personally taking care of them, but it pains me personally if they're not taken care of.
Yeah.
And so as a salesperson, I don't want to leave that hanging in any way if I can avoid it. Right. So great question. Thank you.
I have a question.
As a loan officer, just starting out in external loans, where do you find you generate your initial leads from the most? Or how do you go out about starting to get initial leads
Yeah.
rather than following up with them and getting started?
Yeah, a couple of places I think are not easy, but an easier choice than cold calling. I did not ever build my business on cold calling because it's not genuine, in my opinion. In many cases, right? Sometimes you have to, but in many cases it's not. So first start with where you are. What are your interests? You know, kind of sit down and take a survey of what you like to do. What, you know, do you have a favorite restaurant, type of food? Do you play sports? What do your kids do? You know, do you like to travel? All those things. And if you already kind of take stock in the people that you know, start there. And I know sometimes it can be a little cliche, like friends and family, but it doesn't, you don't necessarily need to approach it that way. You can actually just let people know what you do. And I think that is the biggest misconception about sales in general for us, even starting out, even now. You know, we're constantly reinventing ourselves, but a lot of the time salespeople take for granted that our sphere knows what we do. I can't tell you how many times I have missed out on helping somebody because they thought that I did something different than what I actually do. And, you know, to me, sometimes I think that's crazy because I'm like, I talk about it all the time, you know, or I'm out there and don't you see my social and, you know, gosh, I'm handing out my cards and I'm on these boards or whatever it might be. But the fact is that sometimes you're just not getting close enough to people to say, this is what I do. I also think you need to be proud of what you're doing. You know, if you're sometimes not completely committed to what you're selling, you know, it shouldn't be selling every day if you love it. I know, again, because it's hard, right? With the current economy, sometimes that can be a real challenge to any of us. But it can be easier if you are offering up a product or service that you already like, that you believe in, right? And I think that the more you start up conversations with people, they will see that and they'll want to know more about that from you in particular because they see that energy about you.
Thank you.
There's three really practical things that I would do if I was starting out in sales. So the first one is something that I learned years ago. It's like 3-2-1. So every day send out 3 thank you letters for like something that happened. Send 2 emails. So like, hey, I was thinking about you, but phone call, email, phone call, text message, but reach out to 2 people, just, hey, what's that? Like, came across my mind, personal, professional, doesn't matter. And then meet with 1 person every day. It doesn't have to be, to your point, we're not selling. I wouldn't be talking about like, hey, do you know anyone who's buying a house? Like, hey, I just wanted to reach out. I'm new in this industry. I'm just letting people know. I want to reach out to you because I really respect what you did at XYZ, or you've just been someone I admire. Hey, we haven't gotten together for a while. And then at the end of that meeting, this is the second thing, when you're meeting with people, ask every person you meet with, who's somebody that I should be connected with? And people want to help you. People want to connect with you. People will say, you know what, actually, you should know so-and-so who's doing insurance and they might be a good referral source, right? Like people will make those connections for you. And the third one, I have to remember what it was. I have it, 3, 2, 1. Ask people, when people ask you, what's new? Or how are things going? We kind of default to like, everything's great. It's amazing. Oh yeah, like I went to this new restaurant. Be really prepared with something interesting that's new that's happening in your work life that you can share that opens the door for them to ask questions about it. Like, you know what? But how are things? Things are really great, actually. It's been really interesting navigating this interest rate environment now that I'm in mortgage. And it's been really cool because we have a new program specifically for business owners. So I've been going to tons of like business networking events, and that's been really interesting. What's new with you? And like, if you can find 1 or 2 sentences of what's new or what's interesting, to your point, so many people, we think they know what we do, and they totally have no idea, or they forget about it. And so if you can just say it in a personal, casual way, and then change it, like, we're not here to, I'm not selling you anything, I'm just telling you, then it opens the door for them to ask questions.
Mine was, out of the books that are listed on here, which one do you guys consider your favorite or the best or you said that guy?
I personally love the compound effect. I was given that book right when it almost first came out, and it's just created a foundation for me. A lot of what we've all talked about here today, it is about follow-up, but it's first connecting, and then it creates a system for you to follow up. And then after that, it's just you choosing your particular path on how to follow up. So I like the compound effect.
I haven't read any of these books, so now I have one to do. So I know what I'm gonna be reading this summer. My favorite sales books are To Sell Is Human by Dan Pink, which I thought was just really great, insightful. And then another one that I really like is Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard, which when I read it, I thought was about changing yourself. Turns out it's about how to motivate other people to change. But it's really good.
I would say I don't know, Jeffrey Gitomer's books, he's got like the sales, Red Sales Bible, I think it's called. His books are really good on sales.
Yeah, you got good videos too.
Yeah,
On YouTube.
yeah, Facebook, yeah.
So my question to you is, you guys all leaders of teams and whatnot, you hire somebody new on who seems like a good hire, but is struggling in sales. How do you approach them to help them either get on the right track or find a new approach that leads them to success?
I'd say, first of all, recognizing that they probably know they're struggling and they're probably not feeling too good about it. So I would come at it more from an encouraging point rather than like the performance management plan. I think those can be very demotivating. Finding out what the struggle is. I had a salesperson recently that, it was the cold calling part of it. Great with customer service, great keeping those relationships, but always going back to the same well for sales. And then we start talking about what is keeping you at the office. I think, if it's something like that, just trying to pinpoint what the problem is, what the challenge is to them. I think that's where you want to start.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, I think too, it's finding out why or how they got into this role. And as Camille's saying, I mean, don't always seek out natural salespeople. Very few people are natural salespeople, right? So kind of taking a step back and finding out what interested them in the role. If it was not selling, but meeting the needs of people, well, we can definitely help, hopefully find a way that they're comfortable in connecting with people so that they can meet those needs. Instead of, sometimes it can get so paralyzing when we think of sales as sales, right? And especially with those newer sales folks where even very seasoned sales folks, we all go through this stuff. It's kind of a day-by-day thing sometimes, but if we start thinking that we're doing sales, we got to sell something today. And with the economy right now, a lot of salespeople are putting themselves, whether they're new or not new, in that category. It will become absolutely overwhelming, demotivating, and it's sometimes challenging to find a way that we can take a survey and go, okay, we got to kind of go back to one and get back to the basics and find out, okay, I still love what I do. I still love helping people. Maybe they've had successes already. Let's celebrate those successes again and get them in the mode where they can create a personal environment for themselves to have that again. If they haven't had success, then it's helping them get a win, because everybody knows we need a win, and what that looks like to everybody, it could be different. But that everybody needs something positive. If we just focus on the negative all the time, you get deeper and deeper and deeper, right? We need to go up, not down.
So I remember I was working with a client and they had this salesperson on their team that was new to the industry. And we had this conversation. Can sales be taught, or are people just good at it, or are they bad at it? And I was hard adamant that sales can be taught and anyone can learn to do it. There is a caveat to that. They have to be coachable and they have to be willing to do the work. If those two things are in place, anyone can be incredibly successful in sales. And so if they have those two things in place, how do you take someone who's struggling, who maybe doesn't have the skills? If you guys nail that, what is the gap? And talking through it with them, people know what they're not good at and what they are generally. So like, where are you struggling? What is the struggle? Why are you struggling with it? What kind of support do you need is always the first step. The second step is to give them some mentorship. Let them watch people who are good at sales, spend time with people who are good at sales. Start really like, how do you make it a culture where your team learns from each other? One of the things that I often make clients do that they really, really hate is get in a room and everyone makes sales calls together and they take turns. And at first people are like, this is the worst thing ever. Why are we doing this? And what they realize is that it's not actually about them making the call. It's about them learning from everyone else that's making the call. And you hear, oh, that was really interesting the way you approached that. I really like that. And then they start to look forward to it. And they're like, oh, this is fun. I get to do this with my team. So I would say finding ways to get the team working together and mentoring each other is really, really powerful. And then the third thing is get them a coach, whether that's an internal or external, where they can like walk through and get one-on-one support can make a huge difference for people too. Oh, good question.
Then I know after doing business with you, you came to my door. Do you want to tell a little bit more about post-sale?
About post-sale.
Post-sale, you know, you brought something to my door, the re.
Oh,
Or
well, so yeah, Paul's actually a
stealing a
client.
secret. but-
Yeah. Yes, so, you know, we're all looking, of course, we knew each other on a personal level, so I was fortunate to know a little bit about what might make him and his wife happy. So we created a sign for a home that he bought, and it was welcome. So I think items of value that kind of provide a reminder of how good the situation was, or the product or service actually is. It provides, you know, kind of a, just every time you look at it, you can think about it, and you hope that, you know, they also do as well. So again, it's just getting to know your client, and that is a relational aspect of it too.
And Camille, I know that you touch base with your clients on a regular basis. You have a Friday tradition, if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, I used to have a Friday tradition of taking cookies out to clients and trying to, you know, keep in touch with, you know, maybe someone had signed an annual agreement, but you want to make sure you're touching base with them at least once a month. So I would bring cookies and a thank you card out to them. And who doesn't like cookies? And we get to find somebody who doesn't like cookies. Even if you're on a diet, if somebody brings you a free cookie, you're still gonna eat the free cookie. Yeah.
I think to that point, like you talked about it, having some type of structure, whether it's like just naming something and putting structure to it, is so helpful for all of us as humans. So whether it's like, okay, I'm doing 3, 2, 1, or like I have a client we call WAP, weekly outreach plan, right? And every day you have to reach out to somebody new, or right on Fridays I do, like, how do you?
Thank you Fridays. Thank you Fridays.
Name it and systematize it, and it's amazing that how you start doing it versus like, okay, I think I'm gonna reach out to these people, or here's all these good ideas. Like, if you put a little bit of structure around it, you're gonna be way more successful.
Well, especially as salespeople too, guys. I mean, if we are in charge of our own days, if we aren't in charge of our own days, then we will flounder, right? So, you know, we have to have some sort of plan, and that gets into goal setting and business planning as well, because where do we want to be? You know, we talk about meeting the needs of others, but what are our needs too? And so it's okay to talk about that, because if anything, it just motivates us to help more people. But we still have to have a plan every day.
I'm like thinking now in my head, I'm like, should the plan be for every day of the week? Like, meet new people Monday. Follow up Friday. Now I gotta take my name off. Have a name for every day of the week.
I was just at a convention, and someone had the idea of having a jar of like a candy jar. You drop it off at the business. This is like business, but you drop it off the business and it's, you know, branded or whatever. But every week you're replenishing it with candy, and, you know, that gives you a chance to talk to the frontline people too. And sometimes the frontline people are your keys to getting in with the decision makers. So building those relationships, I thought that was a great idea too.
Any of you have a story of the biggest, one of the, a rejection that you turned it around and you're pretty proud of it, actually? Like you got a bunch of no's and maybe it was the 5th time or 6th time and it was like, you still got the sale. Can you think of a time that was, any of you have a story?
I have a story recently that's probably one of my favorite sales stories, and it just happened, so that's probably why it's one of my favorites. My memory's not long. So this client that I work with that does the automated air sealing, they had been talking to Polish for a long time as a potential customer. So obviously they're a large builder. This client's based in Bend and they do work in Oregon, Central Oregon, and then Southwest Washington. Really weren't getting any traction, like years, like 5 years talking to them. They have personal relationships with the owner. It's just like, we don't need to do this. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do this. Then there was an energy modeler who convinced them why they should do it based on the 45L tax credits. That's getting a little in the weeds, but then they went with another vendor who does the same type of air sealing for that product because that energy modeler had a relationship with that vendor and kind of hand fed it to them. And I remember like they were so pissed, to be honest, when they're like, we've been talking to these people for 5 years, we couldn't get them to do it, now they're doing it, but they're using this other vendor, like kind of that gut stop feeling I think we've all had in sales where you're just like, and I was like, it's fine. We're gonna get their next subdivision. And the guy's like, what do you know? I'm like, good thing, I just know we're gonna do it. And so I think being creative is about how you engage in relationships with people and how do you make it not about the sale. So what we did is we were actually doing a panel discussion on 45L tax credits and why builders should do it. And we knew they had just decided to do it. So we reached out to their purchasing manager that we didn't have a relationship with, but we're like, would you be willing to be on this panel? Because we know you just made this decision. It would be so helpful for other people to understand what your thought process was. And she said yes. And over this period of basically a week, while we were planning this panel discussion, we were able to build this really strong relationship with her. And at the end of the panel, she looks at us and she's like, so are you competitors with this other vendor? Like, what's the relationship? And we're like, yes, but you know, we're just happy that you believe in the technology and we're here to support you. We want you to be successful. She's like, I think we should definitely have at least 2 vendors that are doing it. And like, you guys should be doing at least half the work, right? And I'm like, absolutely, right? And so I think that is a great example of be creative. Like, what are other reasons that you can engage with people that are really important, that are of service to them, that give them opportunities that elevate the conversation? That's like the thing I'm always talking about. Elevate the conversation. Don't make it about your product. Don't make it about you. Make it about the bigger picture. And then once you have those relationships, then the sale becomes really easy. But don't get discouraged just with that initial no, right? It's just not now, but the door's open to keep having different conversations in the future.
Yeah. I think for me, what pops out in my mind is I was referred a potential client and she was from the area and then she moved away, but she wanted to make it back. And so we were trying to, you know, really meet her needs and help her, you know, of course, finance the house here. But over time, months turned into, I guess, almost a year. And she actually referred her sister who was here. And so we ended up helping the sister, but we're still talking to the other person. So, you know, at times the initial construct may not be that at all. You know, we can actually create relationships where we need to be open, where we're not always thinking it's just that one person, because they end up liking you. They're just, maybe their circumstances change. And it's the ultimate compliment, I think, to be referred someone they know that.
I have a question for you, ladies. A lot of people think that, or have the opinion that if they do business with you, then you should reciprocate and do business with them. You know, everybody has either a service, a product, or something to sell, right? What's your opinion on that?
Oh gosh, that's such a hard one too, because like, especially in this town, when you know people, you know, 10 realtors and, you know, 5 mortgage people and you love them all. So it's a really hard.
It's almost like all or nothing.
Yeah, it is. I think like when I've had to make that decision, I've just thought, you know, I have thought, who has provided, like, who has, you know, gone out of their way to help me in my career? That was how I made the last decision. Who's, you know, been there for me, I guess, is how I looked at that. I don't think it should be that way where, you know, if you don't do business, I would never tell somebody if you don't do business with me, then I'm not going to do business. So, but yeah, that has been a hard one for me too.
Well, real quick, I know that we're wrapping things up, but I think especially in our industry, I mean, lending, realtors, financial advisors, insurance agents, you know, all those good things, because they're true product and services that almost everyone will need at some point in time. You know, my referral partners, I try to do my best to build a deeper partnership with them, because of course I don't want them using anyone else. But I do recognize that some people have certain spheres or focuses of clients or clientele that I'll be aware of. And those are, you know, we can kind of set out those boundaries or at least get additional detail in the beginning. So it's not so awkward, but ultimately I think communication is the best. You've got to have those direct communication, open conversations in the very beginning so that you're not blindsided. You know, just talk about it, but expectations too. If you've got certain expectations, the other person probably does too. You just need to talk about it up front so that there's not a breakdown later.
I do think there's that funny triad, right? Or it's not even a triad, but of those industries that like cross refer, and it's like, well, this is that person and that's not like, and it gets a little like crazy. And so I think there's what you said, I think is really important. Like, okay, well, this person's really good with first time home buyers. This person is really good with custom home builders, right? This person's really good with that. That helps like make it easier to distribute, but also be creative. Like, who are other people that are outside of that that could potentially be influencing? So I use the example here, if I like doing, I'm trying to give you an example, like I work with a financial planner in Bend, and they work a lot with business owners like that are getting ready to sell their business in 3 to 5 years. Okay, who's working with business owners? Who's their IT person, right? Like that person's not getting asked for referrals all the time. So if you can find 1 or 2 people outside of your standard referral partners, that makes a big difference. And recognizing you don't need 25 referral partners referring you 1 person. You need a handful of people referring you consistent business.
Sure. There's enough business out there.
The pie is big enough, right? Let's thank our experts for their contribution. And again, their information's on the back counter. Best way to contact them. And the slides will be emailed to all of you, whether you're on Zoom or present with us today. By the way, past ones, if you've missed any of the Ask the Experts, they are on YouTube. Is it the Chamber's YouTube?
It is the chamber, yep,
Okay.
there'll be a link to that email tomorrow.
Okay, so if you missed a lot of feedback, that was excellent last month and on KPIs before that. So just a lot of great stuff. We also want to thank STCU. Appreciate you making Ask the Experts free for everyone. We want to do some drawings. Let's see. Grab the bucket back here. So let's see. Camille, what did you bring?
I brought a brand new NonStop local mug. You might know KNDU as NBC right now, but we rebranded this summer to NonStop Local, and that includes a $25 gift card to
Dutch Bros.
not just the
Okay.
cool mug.
Allie Wagner. Woo, you're a winner. Come on up. Come on up. There we go.
Display that mug proudly, please.
Okay. Right. I can't heard anybody else bring the door press.
Yeah, there's a book called Raving Fans. So for
Okay.
those of you who haven't read one of these on the list, it is on the list.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Did you say you're giving that one away?
Oh, it's Dustin's that got it right there.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to draw? Sorry.
I will. That's a fun book. All right. Kirsten.
Kristen. You
Kristen?
spelled my name wrong.
And your own card. You're brand new. You are.
Before you did it. Thank you.
Let this be a lesson.
I know.
Right. All right. Okay, back on Kate.
That's a conversation starter.
It is.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, if you do us a favor, so we've already filled it out, the survey, if you are live in the room, so we can make these extremely valuable to you, so you'll attend again and refer us to business colleagues. If you're on Zoom, You can scan the QR code there on the screen. Just leave it on, here, you just flip it over on your table, and we'll pick that up afterward. I've also left a tool for you in the back. I like the animal personality styles. Camille talked about the disc. There's social styles, there's colors, and talking to the different styles. So this is on the back. It's like when you're talking to a driver, a lion person, you get to the bottom line, you cut to the essentials, right? If you're talking to more of a golden retriever, you're gonna come in a little soft and be more relational with them. So that's on the back counter for you. Our next Ask the Experts, you probably got a flyer as you came in. It's always the fourth Tuesday of the month from 3 to 4:30. Our next one is on strategic planning in a VUCA world. So that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So if you're like, I need a strategic plan, I don't know where to start. We're gonna have three fantastic guests, Dr. Loanne Ayers, Rebecca Woods, and Zach Ratkai will be here to talk about strategic planning for your business next time. So hopefully you will join us. We do have someone in the room here afterwards, so if you're gonna mingle, we encourage that, grab some cookies, but let's do it out in the lobby. And we'll keep our conversations going out there. May your business continue to prosper in 2023. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.